Yeah, man. So welcome. This is the Next Matters Most podcast with Eric Porper. I just had to do that. Um, Eric, we know each other, and I'm sure hopefully I can talk to the producers and get this to be one of many parts. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on.
Yeah. I'm one of these people who has always been an entrepreneur. So I started companies in emerging technologies since starting in high school, um, because I love it and I love building companies and I love helping other people build companies. And I don't like raising money, but it's a required part of building a company, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And so when you look at what's been going on in the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years with the expansion of accelerator programs, um, I really see a gap in the marketplace for true venture building and really taking ideas and exploring them fast and seeing where the market fit is. And that leads us to where I am today with Unboxed Venture Studio. And we want to take that concept and apply it to great ideas, iterate rapidly and be very explicit when things aren't working. That's what I love doing. And that's what I'm
Sweet.
doing now.
All right. You look great, by the way. You look hella airbrushed. Is that a
I
feature
do.
on your camera, or is
No,
it just natural? All natural.
I have a natural glow about me, man.
Yeah, man. There you go.
Like,
The pandemic is treating you well, buddy. The pandemic is treating
it
you
really
well.
is. I think I had COVID-19 a couple months ago, and it just makes you glow after a while.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody, kids, don't try this at home.
That's true.
So yeah, we met a couple of years ago, I think, and maybe it was more, maybe it was less. And you've done lots of stuff in the entrepreneurial community, as well as, I guess, some of legislation and state level stuff. And you're an influencer on a couple different levels, including the North Carolina Blockchain Initiative, amongst other things. What are those, and what prompted the involvement there?
So I got into blockchain as a technology and part of a technology stack that would solve a lot of the existing problems we have, especially in the financial markets, but in a lot of areas, privacy, um, any type of consumer information. You see it in advertising and all that. Probably 7, 8 years ago, and it was always on my periphery till I met a couple guys who were doing a Bitcoin conference in 2014, 2015 in North Carolina. It was one of the first conferences in the space. There were a couple others in some big markets. And through that, really started to go down this path of what blockchain means and how it has influence over various industries. And so we took that conference, we scaled it out, had a pretty big conference in 2018. We've had a good connection to in 2018, the lieutenant governor, and he expressed a lot of interest in seeing how we can educate legislators in the state so the state doesn't fall behind in adopting technologies. It's all about economic development, and emerging technologies will enable a lot of opportunities from a financial perspective, investor perspective, and employment perspective in the state. And that's what they want to see. So we put together the North Carolina Blockchain Initiative. Our intent is more educational now, with the goal of, after we develop a report that can help demonstrate, it's a half educational report and it's a half recommendation section. I guess half is about recommendations. We hope to then turn it into a more legislatively focused initiative so we can drive adoption of these types of technologies. I think it'll extend beyond blockchain. That's just one of the technologies we're doing. So we go out, we meet with a lot of people not just in the state. We were up in DC back in February, like right before all this stuff happened. And so we met with a couple senator offices. We met with, just basically every entity that we could pack into 2 days. And we learned a lot about what they're doing at the federal level and the type of impacts they want to have on blockchain, so we could bring that back to the state and put it in our report.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, this is, I'm hoping that the series is kind of a collection of authentic conversations, but we started this a little bit before kind of the pandemic, and it was sort of broadly looking at the next thing, the next wave of whatever. Big umbrella, is it education? Is it job creation? Is it technology? Is it invention? Is it, all kinds of stustuff. So I want to talk about, and you kind of took this from blockchain to, economic development. And it sounds like, your way, or in your mind, the best or one good way to impact the future of the economic development and growth of at least our state, and maybe our state can be a model for others, was through getting to legislators to make sure they're not cogging the wheels of progress, so to speak. I guess can you elaborate a little bit on that and how that leads to where we're going to go in the future?
Yeah. So especially, states have a lot of influence on the types of entrepreneurial endeavors that happen within the state. And it's based on how they view and how they write things into law. I mean, it's really simple. And with stuff like blockchain or other, like AI is going to be the next big one where there's going to be a lot of legislative focus. I mean, it's already happening, especially at the federal level, but not as much at the state level. We need to make sure they're adopting policies to help explore what these things can do. Because, typically politicians are nervous about any change to the status quo, and most new technologies will be a change to the status quo, blockchain notwithstanding. So we propose things like there should be a legislative sandbox so we can get companies, throw them in there for 2 years, have them report on what they're doing and how it's working, and help drive the types of legislation that need to happen based on what's in the real world, what's really going on. And blockchain as a good example, there's no we don't look at it as there's a blockchain industry. Blockchain is going to enable new healthcare industries almost, or new ways to do commerce. It's already happening. And, we hear a lot about global currencies. That's all because of blockchain. So our goal is to ensure that we don't adopt legislation today that will restrict the growth. We're not looking for people, and in fact, I'd advise this completely, that the legislator they don't just open it all up. We want to adopt small, smart policies so we can be really honed in on what the new industries that we'll be creating come surface up.
Well, I can see, so blockchain makes sense as something that could either accidentally or intentionally get kind of regulated, not out of existence, but the potential of what that could open up could get tamped down significantly. AI seems very similar. Privacy, if you think about IoT, like how do we regulate privacy? This isn't about politics, but like lots of regulation and lots of things flowing through politicians in Washington sort of doesn't seem like the way to progress, but you're sort of trying to address that head on. I guess what are your thoughts?
I mean, you got to go both ways, right? So you got to this is the venture building side. You got to take the risk and start the company and demonstrate some real tangible use case for the technology. I want to do that. We should do that all the time. And we shouldn't wait for legislators to say it's okay. But the flip side is you got to talk directly to people in Congress. You got to talk directly to your representative. They don't know much typically about technology. It's just the way it is right now.
And
And
inversely, in terms of like, because I'm kind of using it as a you're trying to prevent a future problem, but is there a way to like invert that and say, actually, this creates opportunity if we can be proactively progressive in our adoption or embracement on a state level, we can create more
right.
opportunities. And yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do. That's why we look at it as this is about economic development, because that's what they want to hear. And it makes sense. That's what the state should be focused on, is economic development. That's the only way, to rise all tides, is by creating more opportunity, more jobs, more money, more opportunity. So that's exactly how we look at it. There's going to be well, I don't want to say this as a matter of fact, but most of the report, for example, is going to be focused on opportunities. We're not going to have large sections of here are the risks. Those risks exist. People know them. We'll touch on them where it's necessary, but it's all about opportunities. When we go to DC, we talk to these people, whether they're legislators or financial people, or the Fed, or we talk to the FDA for an extended period of time. It's all about the opportunities with the FDA specifically. Opportunities in healthcare abound, and they are committed to seeing progressive action in healthcare space. They are committed to seeing things like you own your health record, but it's complicated. And we know that these technologies, not just blockchain, that's just one thing that's really strong and has potential now, but it'll be something else in 5-10 years. It'll be something that'll add on to blockchain. They're committed to seeing that through. They look at it from the risk perspective. We need to go and say, no, it's actually a really strong opportunity, and that outweighs the risk. So let's just find a smart way to move it forward. It's the sandbox idea. That's why that's great in a state. It helps move things forward in a controlled way.
Yep. I mean, it's applying startup, I guess, mindset to it, right? Which is, iterate in a small environment and fail fast. I mean, I hate cliches, obviously, whatever, but fail fast in a controlled environment so you can learn, improve, and go back to market in a way that is new and improved. Find product market fit before you really scale.
Totally. I mean, cliches exist for a reason. It's not like someone made it up. So everyone grasped onto it, and that's a great one. And that's even the venture studio model. That's why it works so great, because it allows you to iterate fast. It minimizes the risk of all parties involved, and we will find really great companies by using that model.
So, what do you think? Let me try to think about how I want to ask this. I love this idea of what's the economy of the future, and it's time to start thinking about that future economy. And how do you think, we can talk about the specifics of what that is, but how do you think North Carolina stacks up, and where are we positioned regionally or nationally to be able to be first or be leaders in some of those new economy thoughts?
Well, let me be controversial about it. Should North Carolina be a leader? What do you think? I mean, does it matter?
Versus who?
Well, just that. I mean, what's I'm focused on the North Carolina Blockchain Initiative on doing things that make this the most attractive state for those technologies. But the reality is, blockchain, like as in a great example, is about decentralization. And we're seeing the decentralization of the workforce. And all that does is make it easier for me to get the best talent to solve really complex problems, no matter where they are. Yep. So that's where I'd be controversial about it. But I guess the home boy part of me, I like North Carolina. I love North Carolina. I want to see it succeed. We're probably better position. We are better positioned than most states. We have a lot of good talent. We have a lot of money in this state, and we have enough big industry in this state to connect dots. Those dots right now are scattered, and that's one of our biggest problems, is they're not talking to each other. That's part of a state issue, because we don't have good, really strong legislation. We don't move fast enough. We don't move as fast as like New York. Whether that's good or bad fast, it can always be debated. We don't move as fast as even some parts of California. We know that, or Texas, the big hubs of innovation. But then there's also little states like Wyoming and Colorado who are really being progressive when it comes to adopting newer technologies. So we might not be as well positioned from a legislative standpoint as those areas, but we're better positioned than a lot of them when it comes to just the talent and opportunity that exists throughout the state.
No, that's great. Yeah, I do. I guess appreciate the question. And funny sidebar, I completely was like word blocked on the word controversial. I was trying to think about that the other day and this morning. I was like, it's conflict. It's something like I couldn't think of it. I was like just toast. It was just blank. But yes, controversial. Yeah, like what's the value of a state? What's the value of a collection of people inside of any barrier or boundary, a building? What's the value of that? Do we value in person? Right now we have no in-person or very little in-person collaboration physically. I mean, obviously we can do virtually in person, but is that, I mean, you back up the chain, state level university systems, I guess, are they the main stakeholders in wanting to drive, I mean, tax dollars? There are motivators at certain levels to say that there is a value of that kind of invisible boundary that goes between North Carolina and Virginia or South Carolina or Tennessee or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. And why would we care? I mean, if we're, talking about the future of business and technology and entrepreneurship, should we care? Is it, we will ultimately still have to follow and abide by like state rules so long as the country has states, so long as there's a country. So, or I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, kind of goes down a rabbit hole really quickly.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree that, well, I don't know if agrees are, but the university systems are the drivers of the talent right now. I think that's changing. I think that has been changing over the past few years. And I think today that change is going to accelerate. We know that because we can see, have university systems been devalued in just 2 months because they went to online learning, which is super cheap. I mean, it costs a lot of money to go to a major university, or private universities are outrageously expensive. What's the value of going? And I don't know, you could almost lump that together of what's the value of getting your company together in a building. Which I actually think there's a lot of value in that. You can't have serendipitous interactions like this. We have to purposely call each other. We're not going to bump into each other online, which is a great idea. How do you make it so you can bump into someone online?
Put that in chat rooms. Yeah, like it'd be cool if someone could be like a chat room or something. I gotta write that down. One CD that you could put into this machine, and then all of a sudden there's chat rooms. Yeah, that'd be cool. What's old is new again. Speaking of the 90s,
let's get America online.
Yeah, let's get America online. That'd be cool. Speaking of 90s, I feel like what a crappy decade, except for 90s hip hop. Do you feel the same way, or are you?
Well, I like 90s hip hop is great, but I also like 90s music was fantastic overall, is what I would say. It was not. I don't know. It was all right. I did pretty well in the late 90s, so I can't say it was all that bad.
Okay, so you got out before the dot-com bust.
Well, kind of. I mean, yeah, I didn't get killed by it. I was able to actually sold assets of a company, which we probably would have continued, and we probably would have grown slow because we didn't really know what we were doing, and that company probably ran into the ground had it not been for we hit a wall because of .com, and we're able to work with some partners to sell some of those assets.
Yeah. So I want to stay on this thread of economic development, but I also want to touch on some of those stories of how you got here and knowing your story. But as far as economic development and the economy of the future, we could just say the state matters, so we can these boundaries will still exist in the future.
The state absolutely matters, but it's always philosophically worth throwing out there. Come on.
1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I have a few other like rhymes in my head that tell me historic dates in our form, in
Okay.
America, but I can't really recall all the exact ones. But anyways, it's been a thing for a long time that we've had states. So we're probably going to keep those.
Makes
But talk about the economy of the future and why you're some guy getting other people talking about, we need technology. When you talk about the state level, and I don't know, there's a gap, right? There's a gap between socioeconomically, between education levels, and some people might just be like, what the fuck, this guy's tone deaf, why are we wanting more like high paying work jobs for like people to like work in their nice homes on their Mac versus other stuff that's more important. And I mean, there is other stuff that's maybe more important, but I think there's a lot of merit to being a thriving economy and how that impacts all. So how do you see kind of the economy of the future shaping up in a way that sort of makes us all kind of a stronger population?
Yeah. So it's a very complicated question. So a big part of what we were tasked to do in the blockchain initiative was look at how these technologies will impact rural areas in North Carolina, because there's a lot of rural areas in North Carolina. There's a lot of rural areas in every state. We just typically don't think about how much land and how many people that makes up. And it's really, really complicated. But when you start looking at it, farming communities, we're able to, because of technologies like this, we're actually able to prop up those farming communities because they don't need to worry as much about going through the large supply chain actors. They can use smaller networks that they can create themselves. And we're already seeing that a little bit in various areas of agriculture. So I think a lot of what's happening is, so I guess it's like the philosophical view of technology is all we're doing is removing barriers between each other. And the more barriers we remove between each other, the more opportunities there are for individuals who have a product or services, whether that's a farm or a skill, a manufacturing skill, whatever it may be. And so by adopting good legislation to enable these things, we're actually building up rural area communities, because those employees are getting opportunities that were not available to them.
Yeah, and I'm not studied in the arts of government, and it's been a long time since I slept through some college classes. But I mean, I feel like government follows industry. For example, if someone's like, oh, I've got a new plant I want to open, a government might say, great, we'll fund an education program or provide you some subsidies to train local workforce. So because there's industry, there now becomes training. I'm just thinking about, how do you think about worker training? How do you think, one weird metaphor, anecdote, I'm not sure the right word, is the auto industry. All these towns had auto industry spin-offs and small plants, specialty parts, whatever that was, and it was a huge industry. And I can't really think of anything that's replaced that domestically. And we hear about manufacturing in China, but bringing it back and advancement. But there's, whether it's manufacturing or tech workers, like if all of Apple's and Amazon's and all these tech companies had their call centers. I mean, obviously there's fulfillment centers, but other jobs like that were here, or Apple, they could have assembly, they could have people making the little plastic stickers for the accessories. Those have either gone to other markets, some because of low cost labor, some just because of tax policy, meaning they have like made a massive plant in like Iceland, and they've got shit in Ireland. And that's just like, yay for taking advantage of it and maybe improving your price to the shareholders, which really impacts like nobody that directly. So I would actually rather think about how those, but there hasn't been an industry replacing auto in terms of the proliferation of businesses and jobs that go throughout different towns where, and why would they? I mean, there needs to be something around proximity to something, and something around available pool of something, resources, people. So yeah, I mean, I think,
well, re-education is really complicated. That's the challenge. And a lot of people think, well, we need to get these, I think Obama like famously said, let's get them programming. And that's just not going to happen. We're not going to train a bunch of, steel workers or, coal miners who are in their 50s and don't have a job, or in their 40s even, younger people, uh, to all of a sudden become coders. And coding as a skill set is declining in value anyway. So that'll go away too, as a large group of employees. So one of the things in North Carolina, to bring it back to that's just really strong, is our community college system. We have the third largest community college system in the country. 700,000 students they run through that community college system. It's a lot. They have 50, I want to say 53, don't quote me on that, about 53 locations. So there's a community college that's accessible to pretty much everybody in the state. They want to produce, and they already do, a lot of shorter term programs, certificate type programs. Those are the types of things that governments can better leverage to get people trained on various skill sets. And because those community college, at least in this state, are so well, spread out and accessible, they can look at what types of opportunities are available in their small region and ensure that they're retraining based on what's available. So I think, I don't, as far as how that relates to the economy of the future, you start getting into, do we need a universal basic income, with automation and all that stuff, which let's just assume that that'll never be a need for the sake of this conversation. We know that technologies are making it easier for you to start a business within your wheelhouse. So if you're just a skilled employee because you worked in a manufacturing plant for many years, you've got a lot of knowledge. And so you might be able to start a small business. And we can use the community college system, through a 12-week program and a grant from the state, or from, however that needs to work, or from investors who can invest in people as opposed to the business. And we can see how things crop up from there. I think there's a lot of private market solutions to that and public support that can help make that happen.
Yeah. And I think, technology is inevitable, and this isn't like an anti-technology sentiment, but just like tech for the sake of tech is sort of just turns people off. It's the next Instagram sold for $1 billion so people can look at themselves. That's, I think, can turn folks away from sort of the other side of that, which is, if tech can make farming more profitable, then someone can be a farmer. And now we can afford maybe more low-skilled workers to work said farms because production is up, supply chain is improved, more product can get to the markets, cost to the end user goes down. Things where tech is actually enabling higher quality of life, higher output. It's not just skilled jobs, it's unskilled jobs. And it's also there's a value of worker training. And so creating that assembly line worker was actually very skilled at the way they did that thing that they did on that line or for that plant. And it's a skill they carried for 20 or 30 or 40 years. And that town then became skilled at that. If you wanted to go into that line of business, you got skilled. There's still an opportunity to have low entry points in training individuals to get these skilled jobs. And there still should be a, kind of an institutional or enterprise value to retaining skilled workers. And if you're in a town where this is the lead opportunity, you as a company can say, hey, I've got, a big moat in terms of my supply of workforce because I'm investing into training and I'm working with the state. So I think it can all come together to sort of be in North Carolina, it's, farming and ag tech, stuff like that, just in general, but, Midwest and Steel Belt was plants. There's all kinds of, I think, those jobs that should be kind of empowered as we think, at least in our way. The thing that we can do to impact that is thinking about technology, advancing tech companies. You're going a level up and talking on the state level in terms of legislation and really trying to drive the ball forward so that we can all see the good, the win-win. If it's not a win-win, it shouldn't fly. If it's just a Nick and Eric win on this deal, then that just is very finite, and that's not going to be what moves our overall kind of population forward.
Yeah.
And I would just click Siri off because she's like just taking all these notes. Hey, stop listening. Oh, technology. Okay, that's a negative. That's a technology
negative. I agree with
Damn
that.
it. No, I love it, dude. That's awesome. I mean, and I want to switch gears totally. The university system today, is it obsolete?
No, but, and I don't
Where'd you go to college? Did you go to college?
Yeah, Florida State.
Okay. I went to UNC here in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It's like all these beautiful buildings, and that oak tree is like old as hell. And so it's like, I did tours. Actually, I kind of know more than I'm leading on because I was doing the student tours, walking.
Oh, you're one of those people.
I just did trying to build my resume up, man.
Well, I just did all that with my kids. Like
I could have taken you on a tour. Yeah. I mean, I was super obsessed with my resume until I realized like all jobs suck and I should just be an entrepreneur, which also sucks some of the time.
Well,
a lot of highs, a lot of lows. But yeah, so I mean, okay, sorry, let's get back to the question.
Not obsolete, but just the value proposition is changing. Yeah. What do you want to get? If you had to go to college today, what would you want to get out of it in 4 years? I mean, what would your desired outcome be? Because I think what happened is, I mean, you probably went to college. You're like, I'm going to get a degree. Yeah. And it was like, I'm going to get a bachelor's degree. That's what I'm going to do. That's why I'm going to college. And then I'll get a job. It's probably the mindset you had going into college. Probably that simplistic. Even if it was like, I know what I want to do, it's, I'm going to go to college and get my degree.
That's right.
And I think the value proposition has changed. I think we want to see people go into college and think, I want an outcome of, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z and be able to start a career here. And just like building a startup, they might pivot through that journey of 4 years, but we've got a better, and I think and that might be, don't go to college right after high school. We're seeing a lot more people take a gap year. That's a thing that was, I don't know, when I was young, it was unheard of, a gap year.
It's definitely one of, I mean, government, universities, these big ass bureaucracies, I feel like the trend is they're always lagging indicators, or I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but like, because by the time I got to college, it was still like, because 20 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, getting a degree ensures you are employable or ensures you have a path and a job. And I was there was like, no one freaking got a job. It's like, sweet, you're a history major. What does that do? Like literally, what does that do? You still go interview for something totally different, but because of these learnings, you like sort of correlate it to employability.
Right. You're able to say, well, okay, I can take, past experience and, turn it into a better outcome in the future. So therefore I'm going to be,
which you could do like
marketing analyst. I went as a history major.
I had so I remember asking, I was in the business school. So I did like all the right things. I went to college and I was on the soccer team. I asked the guy, who's the smart guys on the team? Like these guys have academic scholarships. They're Moorhead scholars. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, oh, we're doing the business school because it's like really good. It's like well-known nationally and you got to apply. So it's more selective. Like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do the business school. And then you get there, you're like, all right, well, what jobs are you doing? Like, well, we're doing banking because it's like a really good job as a platform. Like, okay, I guess I'll do banking. And then it's like, well, this was like also I graduated 2003. So kind of like the summer before when you're supposed to go to internships, like it was like right after 9/11, and like finance in New York City was just sort of not like necessarily flush with money or jobs. And so it's like, well, all right. So I asked the career center, I'm like, all right, what jobs are there? Like, what kind of things could I do? And they're like, well, let's just look at the calendar. Like, here's who's interviewing. I'm like, that's not advice. That's like, you're a fucking admin, man. Like, that's a lot of money for you just to kind of like look at the calendar and leave it all up to me to find my own job. And yes, we have to take control and be accountable for ourselves and not make excuses. But that was just kind of a weird moment. So I ended up networking and finding a job. And it was actually still in New York City, but it was through connections here, there. Family used to work at this place. And like, hey, you should interview at this place. And like, I got it. And it was in sales. But it was sort of like I've been sort of, I wouldn't say bitter ever since, but it's sort of like every time they reach out with a mailer and be like, hey, send in $30. I'm like,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Right.
I love Carolina. I love like kind of like watching sports and like being like, oh, it's a great public school. And, sort of, I like so much about it, but I'm really like, seriously go after yourself, because why would, first of all, how
Yeah.
are you putting yourself in my shoes? Like, why would I want this little letter? Have you even asked me anything about my life? And so, my oldest son is 9. And so since like 9 years ago, we've been like, does college even matter? They need
Yeah.
learning, they need skills, they need training, they need experience. But like, what else do you get out of that? Well, maybe sports. Well, sports is weird because amateurism and like sort of like, you don't need to funnel into a college just to get teamwork and goal setting. And that's assuming
Right.
they like sports. And then like, you need a job. Well, you can get training. You can go. When I was interviewing, the number one thing that they would like be like, oh, so tell me about oh, wait, look at this. You started a irrigation system business in one summer. Tell me all
Yeah.
about that.
That's all I care about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. And it honestly was the biggest failure ever. As an embarrassment. I just like was with my best friend of mine, still my good friend, or still one of my best friends. Well, I don't really have any friends anymore now that you just get old and have kids, and it's hard to keep up. But he was the best man at my wedding as well. But yeah, no, we dug trenches. We were installing irrigation systems, and like, man, but like they never worked. So did a lot of good sales, started a business, and like the shit just didn't actually work. So we had to bring in an expert, and we ended up sourcing most of our jobs to him and making a small amount of money as like a commission only sales rep. But honestly, we talked about that the whole time in every interview. And it wasn't like, what school, what classes? Tell me about, finance 101. Like, oh, well,
Now you're the interviewer, and I am too. And you talk and you see resumes of people, and what do you hone in on with the resume? I mean, I can't remember the last time I went straight to what school did they go to? What was their GPA? I've never even asked that question. I don't think if it. And
so leading and lagging, yeah. I mean, I like the leading and lagging concept, and I think maybe in 10 or 20 years, I think they can pivot. Obviously, they can kind of make this a distributed experience. I mean,
well, there's some things that like even just making the connection. So you do make connections in college, just like being in an office. I think that's important. That I don't want that to go away. I think there is something of a coming of age, like rite of passage as you become an adult and you live on your own in a very controlled environment. I think that's good and bad. I think for most people, it turns out to be pretty good, even a couple of rough weeks here or there. I think that's good. And then, of course, there's all the labs and the things that are definitely not going away and lead to tons of innovation in healthcare and all that stuff. That stuff being part of a campus environment is really important, I think. And so I mean, I agree, man. I think they are lagging. They lag in every way. They are lagging indicators of some kind of change. Funny enough,
physical.
Even though they have like such great technology in some areas, like in their bio labs and all that, they have such crap everywhere else that when things like this happen, remote learning is really, really difficult. Really difficult. So I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, one of the things you said is physical infrastructure. Like when it makes sense, like, yeah, that's a total accelerant, like you can come in and learn how to use a lab and how to titrate a formula or whatever. But that's something that just doesn't exist everywhere. And there's also, so, I mean, I think the future that has a balance, it's not just like blow down all the buildings, but where there's kind of strong physical infrastructure and important to have co-location that exists. But I'm still just thinking about like the history majors or whatever, like, can't you just like do that remotely?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that again, the value proposition of these universities is changing and will continue to change. And maybe a lot of it is we don't need multi-million-dollar history focused building, a building that houses all of the history professors and books and all that. We can make that virtual. We can lower the cost of the infrastructure of the university. I don't know. I mean, that's
well, no, yeah, and we have thought. I mean, I guess it's not to just bash on history, and if it's history, it's arts, part of the arts.
I love history.
Arts give us thoughts, and history gives us empathy for where we are, or what's happened to get us here, and helps give you perspective on why you're saying it's important.
What you're saying is actually really simple. It's should history majors be spending the same amount of money on their education as some other as a an engineer that gets access to hundreds of millions of dollars of resources across their like a UNC network which extends beyond just North Carolina. So
yeah, well, that I don't know exactly what you meant. I don't even know if your answer was yes or no, and it could go either way, because what does society value more, and how do we weight that, or the ROI of each? So history might have a lower ROI, so maybe they pay less. Maybe that engineer ends up paying more, or we charge more. The reimbursement to the university could be more for history because we need to fund more of that to offset the fact that that's not going to be commercially as successful. So anyway, I like that kind of thinking, and
I agree.
And whatnot.
One more question on the college thing. Do you use your alumni network? So is there value in that alumni network?
I mean, I hope. I'm going to talk to some people from UNC on this show, so I don't want to kind of sour the well or whatever, but no, it's not great. I've got a close bond with the group of guys I played soccer with, and we will email and kind of get together every year.
Those are just people you become friendly with.
Yeah, no,
broader alumni network.
Correct.
I have a need. I can post out to my alumni message board or listserv. They're probably still using listserv. I mean, yes.
And I talked to many people inside of UNC specifically around how do we grow the value of our alumni. I'm just a great use case. I'd love to help people. I'd love to help people below me, and I'd love to get help from people above me. That's sort of the virtuous circle that we just want to create. And if all that value is attributed to the UNC experience, then when they send me that mailer, I will likely send them some money because I've got money. And then it's like, oh, great. So I think, I don't owe them shit, really, because I already paid. I paid the tuition. Tuition got paid. They made the money off me. They don't need to keep making it off me. I watch the games on TV, so I'm an eyeball, so they can up their ad dollars. So they've monetized me plenty. If they want to add value and think about investing into the alumni experience, then they have to be serious about it. And then I would absolutely
totally
add more and share. It's just a growing pie, right? I would help more. I would ask for help more. I would give more into the network, so on and so forth. So I think, it's all good, and it's a work in progress. I mean, it's, again, bureaucracy. So, but let's go to. So, tell me about. I want to keep us on time here too, but tell me about Unbox, and we're working on some of the Unbox projects together. So I'm aware of it, but for the audience, venture building. But since we're just talking about universities, there's another part of that business around incubation, and I want to use the term that's relevant to where we are now is public-private partnerships. Tie that all together. We just talked about state systems, university systems. They're lagging.
Right.
Enterprise, innovation. What are we doing? What are you doing to sort of kind of address that?
Right. So Unbox Venture Studio is focused on venture building, and venture building to me doesn't just have to be we take some ideas and throw them through a commercialization pipeline or throw them through a process to see if they're viable. That's a big part of it. We'll take a few internally created ideas and put them through that process. We'll take externally created ideas. We'll look at founders and we'll see if they're more. It's usually a better fit for a founder. I don't mean to say anything bad about accelerators. I think accelerators are great. However, I think most founders really need to go through a more hardcore venture building process. So maybe we'll work with those external founders too. That leaves a big gap. So incubation, historically has not been a very successful business. Incubators became a big thing, like 90s, 2000s, and they kind of pretty quickly became accelerators, and the incubators became more public, nonprofit, incubation in university systems, things like that. That's the majority of incubators, as I believe today. But there's a gap between this idea that you're ready for really hardcore venture building and um, and accelerator, let's say, whatever it may be. That's incubation. It still is a really, really valuable part, and we are working with universities as one area to provide the kind of take that same venture building model to incubation. So it's not a prescriptive, you're going to go 16 weeks and do this, and we'll check in on you every week and give you maybe $10,000. But it's more, let's really take this idea that you have. You might not have it beyond an idea stage. You have a small group of founders. Let's pair you with university or other public or private resources, and let's put you through a pretty prescriptive incubation process that looks like venture building. We're going to rapidly iterate through your idea, through you as founders, and through the network that we know, to see if this thing can really take off. So, and that works because we work with a lot of partners in an ecosystem throughout North Carolina and scaling beyond North Carolina. We're able to capture all of those great founders and ideas that don't have a place to go, that got turned down from an accelerator, maybe because they're too early stage, or for a number of reasons, because there just are a lot of great companies, ideas, and founders and there are not enough spots in traditional systems. And that's where incubation comes in. And we want to tie that together with the university systems, hopefully with more friendly legislation like sandboxes for AI or blockchain or whatever those technologies are. So we can be the ones, so, Unboxed can say, well, okay, here's the blockchain sandbox exists. Here's a lot of great founders with really good ideas that have a little element of risk because they're really on the cutting edge of technology. They'll go into the sandbox because we'll help them as part of Unboxed get through that process of applying to be in the sandbox. And we're able to use our incubation resources to see that through.
Yeah. No, it's well said, and it's a great mission. And I like the idea of, applying small, the team of Unboxed started as 2 people. It was us, and we've added a couple folks, but that brings us to like 4. So this isn't a big company. It's small, it's nimble. It's not even a company. It's an effort. It's an initiative at this point, right? To connect these dots. But we want to leverage the best of what sort of these bigger monoliths have to offer at UNC, Duke, and NC State, as well as sort of the community college system. So if we can get the good out of that and apply it to the fast and innovative and nimble sort of process and approach, and that's how I kind of see the public-private partnership, language materialize or manifest itself with Unboxed, which is we don't want the fact that they are universities and they are big to slow down the wave of progress. And they have ones in their own walls, which are cool too. The more there is, the better. And so this is definitely these things are not, there's not a fixed pie that we're taking from. We want to add to the pie and grow the pie, be a part of a bigger and better ecosystem using our own, special sauce, like you said, looking at the future of economies and legislation, what's going to be real, and also just connecting the dots. So we're trying to decentralize the idea of competition between these institutions. Some of them, their funding is from the same ultimate source. Others aren't. Some are.
Yeah, that's it. And I couldn't agree more. Keeping it small and nimble is what's critical. These things move really fast. Technology moves really fast. Ideas move fast. And the technology is merging with industry. I always say, you're not building a technology company anymore. You're building a healthcare company. You might be totally, tech. 10 years ago, everyone said that's a technology company. You're not.
10 years ago, you were supposed to say that shit too. You were supposed to say you're not a shoe company, you're a tech company.
We're a tech company. It's the WeWork problem. came in and said, we're a tech company, so value us like a tech company. So their valuations were through the roof. And it just screwed them in the end. It screwed them. It was, amongst some other things. But, at a high level, that's really, really important. We want to build, Unbox wants to build the next great healthcare company or the next great communication company. And we know that we can do that on the backs of experience and our understanding of the most cutting edge and emerging technologies.
Yep. We could do a part 2 all about venture building and as an asset class. Do you want to talk about why venture building is an asset class in its own category and how it's different than venture capital or a traditional accelerator?
Yeah, I mean that gets into to me at least. I don't know if I have a simple answer. I'd be curious what you would say. I do agree. I mean that is the intent, and I take it as far as to say one of the things that we've talked about is in the future all of these types of emerging assets, like what you're saying, will be easily investable for people. So we didn't talk at all about the investment side of things. And I know that's not necessarily what you're correlating to, but part of what we want to do at Unboxed is capture or make it investing a bigger part of many people's lives, educate on investing and get them to understand that, to help close the wealth gap, it's really more about getting more people to invest. And it's like, so I can get into a whole thing. That's part 2. I'm curious what you think though. Like, what would your answer to that question be?
I don't know. That's why I asked you, frankly. And it sort of touches on another thing about kind of, there is some closing of the wealth gap out there that's needed and access to opportunities, but in a way that's not adding unnecessary risk. There's a reason that the investors have like accreditation requirements. Because like you can afford to lose it as opposed to like the other way, but in the right type of setup, there should be ways for many people to have access to deals that have sort of both the fulfillment and fun and purpose of investing into a thing that you believe in, as well as, the potential upside and financial reward. So solving for that is important. And that's, a part of all of our, as we're looking towards the future, it's about, rising the tide for all people and creating a stronger, population, whether it's population health, closing wealth gaps, whatever, education, training, and not whatever. Not none of these are like whatever type things. They're big ass fucking things. But
they're big things.
The more people that are thinking about that as a part of their goals, like you just said, the better. So, kudos to you. How would I answer venture building? Like, yeah, I mean, venture building versus venture capital is you're doing way more than writing a check. You're working on the product, you're building the product. It's quality over quantity. And through that, and through having true work, elbow grease and more skin in the game on an individual and a principal level, in addition to just capital, you're hoping for a higher chance of success. Obviously, scroll over my disclaimer, like this is not investment advice. There's no guarantee. All things have risk. Yeah. And so it is its own asset class, and as an investor into that asset class, if you're not the venture builder, you have a small portfolio and that things that you can materially impact. You can make one intro that can make the big difference. So instead of writing a check to a fund and they've got a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and they follow on and they just, syndicate some stuff. You're active as a venture builder, as a venture builder investor, and your effort and your capital is what is required and is what will make it successful.
Right. So I'd say the thing is we minimize the risk in venture building or in starting a company. So I don't want to use the word venture building here, but through this concept of venture building, we say radical transparency and explicit intent. We know what we're going for. We go all in to make sure we can prove those things out. And when they're not proving out, we don't mess around and just continue to pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot until we find something that might get some traction, because that'll likely fail. We'll keep taking on more capital in the venture capital in that market. You just keep taking on more capital while you're just digging a hole. And it might feel good to some people, but you're just digging a hole. And that's why all these companies fail. I think it was like over 70% of companies fail after taking an average $1.3 million in capital. That's a large number of failure for, fairly significant early capital.
And they probably saw the writing on the wall at like 500K.
Oh, totally. But they're like, oh, if we just get more money, we can patch that hole with $1 and a penny. It's not going to happen. We'll look at it's. I agree. That's why venture building is somewhat of an asset class, because we move fast. And when we notice it's not working, we kill it. You just kill it. If there's no way, we kill it. So we're minimizing risk, and we're able to look at these things differently than most venture capitalists can, the way accelerator programs work. And it's beneficial for all. It's great. I love it.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's sort of an element of unbiasedness. Like none of the ideas are sacred cows, more or less. Meaning, if they're not going, you can switch gears and pivot or iterate or shut it down and keep it moving. A couple more things about this, and then we'll kind of move to a close. But well, I have an answer to this too. But how much time were you putting towards this kind of before the pandemic, and how much time are you putting towards it now? Like, has that changed? And what's your mindset about the pandemic? Scared, shuffle, invest? I have my
invest. Always invest. There's never a time where I believe that people shouldn't be thinking about and looking at investment. And that can be in very safe places. It doesn't have to be in things that people should always, there's always opportunity. And it's the only way to help grow your personal pie. Got to invest. I put, since, we kind of started this idea and wanted to do things, and I guess I would say we intently moved a little slow. But when this started to crop up in March, let's say, it was clear that it's needed more than ever. So I think the past month or two, I've personally been dedicating most of my time, all of my time, to seeing this thing through and building the landscape and talking to people across the state, crafting some of our ventures and working with some third-party ventures. But this is what it is. And I think that when crisis like this happen, you typically, all it does is it surfaces existing problems and accelerates inevitable solutions in remote working and remote health and just your understanding of your personal finances and how people need to fix that in business finances and opportunities. And so this is a time for an unboxed. And so I think we'll lead out of the gate. And in 5 years, I think you'll see more entities like Unboxed. So that's my view of it.
No. And what did you do? What was the process you went through? Did you take a step back and do a quick audit, or was it just like, of course, smash the gas? All right.
Yeah, I did take a step back. It was quick. It all happened quick. It was like overnight. Okay. It's like, okay, let's take a step back and then let's do that. Let's smash the gas. It was very obvious very quickly when you survey the landscape of that this is more necessary than ever.
Yep. So I agree. And I heard you say accelerate. And I think I just listened to a podcast talking about this is not the great pause. It's the great accelerant.
It's the great accelerant
on all things. And you hit on a few for me too. Like we got on a budget. We're like, hey, we need to keep our stuff in the black on a household level because we got to be prepared for the worst. We can't be throwing the ball up and running under it, planning that next vacation. And there are no vacations. So sweet. It's a cheap summer. Pay off some credit card debt maybe for once. And just sort of like, what does it mean to be present at home? And also, but I'm going to be disappointed if after this or as we move forward, I'm not set up for success in a number of different ways, personally and professionally, because it is a good time to audit, reassess, and like figure out what's important and what yields the most opportunity. And opportunity is
Yeah.
also about impact, so what's going to change the world for the better? Is it just me grinding away? Like, man, no, like let's take a step back and think about it. So I appreciate your
Yeah.
on that. I mean, in a short, tweetable blurb, and not really, you can expand on this.
Okay.
Like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? So what's your why?
Oh boy, I should be able to answer that like right off the tip of my tongue.
We can edit your.
Yeah. All right. We lost editable material there.
Oh, damn.
There's two answers to that. Personally, this is what I love doing and where I think I can have the most impact in my life. Although I've never had a big smashing success, I've done a lot. I've helped a lot of companies and have had so few just complete and utter failures. I've had a lot of learning experiences. And I'm able to take all that and I want to hone it into something that I can have an impact. And this is the thing, I don't know how long I'll be doing this for. I would never say I'd do anything for a lifetime or the rest of my life. But I'll always be doing stuff like this. So why not pull together a great, small, dedicated team of people and have a big impact? The other side of it is I see a lot of people who do struggle. I mean, you talk to so many business owners over the past how many years, like a long time, and how many of them come to you and they're just, they might not say it up front, but you could tell almost instantly that they're struggling. They don't know what to do. They're brilliant engineers or they're brilliant, physicians. They're brilliant people. They have a great, great idea. They pump some money into it and they keep hitting the same walls over and over again. And it's so unfortunate. I want to see those people succeed. I want to create people, all the investor world. I mean, me the same way, they talk about investing in people. Well, this person who comes to me and keeps hitting a brick wall, it's clear and they keep banging their head against it. They're going to the VCs or angels of the world and they're not getting the investment they want because they've not been able to demonstrate them as an investable person. I want to help create those people because I know that they're brilliant. They just need to kind of go through like a venture build process. They need to, that's unbox. They need to get out of their box. And that will drive them to the right focus.
Yep. No, I think, that's why I like working with you too, because it's sort of like a give first mentality, like helping others provides yield, whether it's financial or personal or just fulfillment. But at the same time, sort of over the years, and we've sort of come to the same conclusion, if we can help, a smaller amount of people in a more meaningful way, we'll make a net bigger impact than just helping a lot of people in a little bit of way. Like having 30 minutes of help here versus across 1,000 people is less than, helping 4 people in a super deep way around alignment. And then that's a whole nother conversation around just sort of the power of alignment and running towards the same goal and goal setting. But helping others and ideas. And ideas are great. And they don't just come from one place. Yeah, like other people having ideas. Anyone can have a great idea.
We got a great idea that came out of this conversation. We had a great idea. I wrote it down.
What was it?
Say it again.
No, what was that idea? I need it.
How do you create an environment where you can get that serendipitous there's these encounters when things are online? How do you make that happen? And I don't want another social platform. So if you say it's not going to be a social platform, but it's going to be a way that could happen, there's a really great idea there. And I sit on stuff like that and I love it. And I'll find a way to either turn it into something viable or I'll just kill it and it'll exit my mind fast. I do want to say though, there is no question, because I always want people who invest or invest in their community or are founders and all that. I very strongly believe in monetizing everything because that helps you have a bigger impact on the community around you. So there's no question, as much as I want to help the community, the best way I can do that is building great ventures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good look. And I feel like, I don't know, at the risk of this camera, I'm like, kind of show these little sticky notes over here. It's like, here's one idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. They're all little ideas. These are all investable little nuggets, baby. I'm telling you, man.
It's my notebook of ideas. It's just like one line in a notebook.
That's right.
Never ending.
That's right. Yeah, like what's in this drawer? Is there some ideas? Like, and sometimes I'll like find an old notebook. Actually, in my drawer, this is a notebook. I'm not even sure like what year this one is from. It's like, and I don't even know if I even dated this, but I'm like, well, I'm sure there's a couple of good ones in there. That
so funny enough, I purposely don't date my notebook. I mean, I write in order.
Solid.
Because when I have ideas, I don't want to ever be dissuaded from an idea because I thought of it 5 years ago, and I go flip through my notebook and see it. And I don't know, it's just like I'm just an odd bird. Yep. It's a weird mental thing.
You definitely are. But maybe we have that in common too. So, all right, we're wrapping up.
All right.
We'll set up some time for part 2 or part 3, depending if we splice this into two different episodes and get into, what do you think? What do you think we touched on, but want to cover more off on, or what do you think we didn't touch on that you think would be important for just the world to know?
Well, I think we should have a very focused conversation on the actual, like the healthcare of the future, the opportunities that we look at and say we know, or maybe we have, and we're building actively ideas around these. So kind of, it's kind of the original mindset of what we were talking about is, so what's next? And we have some of those ideas, and we touched a little bit on them as we talk about, well, we're not building a technology company, we're building a healthcare company. So I think there's a lot to talk about that can be beneficial to many, many people, investors, and founders and entrepreneurs. Just think how we think through what those look like and how, what the process is.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely set that up, because I think, whereas before it was, let's pontificate on what's next and be getting good ideas and good, this university system, there also is a reality that the moment is now for some of these things. And not that it's just the moment is now from like a jump on the opportunity, but like the door is open for these needs and these solutions to be implemented, and they're going to add value to everybody. And so if we sort of all sit on our hands and wait till we get a vaccine in 18 months and we're like, oh yeah, it's back to normal. Well, then we all miss the opportunity to improve something. And so I think that's a great idea for part 2. And it's meaningful now, because we should all be doing something right now to invest in ourselves, invest into something that's going to change the world for the better. And it probably would have anyway. Like anything that I know from our conversations that we've talked about would be great no matter what. It's not just to say, it's not just a new like fast COVID test. It's products, it's solutions, it's system engineering that,
That's a great great way to say it, because I think a lot of people jumped on we have a COVID solution bandwagon without thinking about what it might look like in a year, where that solution is really not necessary. I don't know. You got to think big. I think there's a lot of COVID solutions. We've had some good successes with ones, but we really very quickly iterated through the idea to make sure it had legs beyond just an immediate need for a COVID or post-COVID world, solution.
Yep. All right, man. Let's wrap up. What song is playing on your Spotify?
I've been listening to Mad Villain. Mad Villain?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's probably, if I actually turn it on right now, that's probably what's playing.
Yeah, my phone I was at Apple Play or Apple Music, and it just keeps popping on because my Siri keeps jumping on. And I haven't been like listening to a ton, but the song that keeps coming on while I was going back to 90s rap was DMX Slippin'. So I was like, all right, little DMX for you, like back. Well, he was never really normal, so but I love that guy. All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you joining, man, and I'll talk to you later.